How many? How many wrinkles in a pickle? How many hairs in a head? How many waves in the ocean? How many crumbs in bread? But last but not least, baby, most of all, why do I mumble every time you call? Because you're strange to me, baby. Oh, you're good to me, mama. Well, I admit you're a stranger, baby. Please don't change. I know I belong to you. How many bubbles in soap? How many chewings in gum? How many rolls in a wheel? Where did eyeballs come from? But last but not least, baby, most of all, why do I mumble every time you call? Because you're strange to me, baby.
Where do eyeballs come from? All right, so it is indeed Ask or Tell Me Anything Day. In addition to being Columbus Day and Indigenous Peoples Day, it's Ask or Tell Me Anything Day, and you can call this show 888-720-9677. And if that's hard for you, if you wanted alphanumeric, you know you wanted alphanumeric. Come on now, you wanted alphanumeric. 888-720-WNPR. I'm a little punchy today. I don't really know why that is. Actually, I can guess. All right, so 888-720-WNPR. And really, just to reiterate our guidelines, we have no guidelines. And if you think that your call does not amount to a hill of beans, that's good or it's acceptable. Your topic may not amount to a hill of beans, but we like it anyway. I don't know. I'm not expressing it very well. I'm trying to think about a lot of things at once all of a sudden. But all right, just to illustrate how something like this might go, let's take a call. And the call we are going to take is from Guy in Southington. Hi, Guy. You're on the air.
Hi, Colin. I was actually just calling to see what you thought about all the headlines yesterday about the possibility that Columbus is actually a Spanish Sephardic Jew and not a genuine Italian. And the fact that a lot of the headlines kind of put it down as fact, where if you read through the actual article, it's kind of sketchy, the evidence they have.
Headlines will do that. I just want to make it clear, just in case people didn't understand one of the words you said. It was genuine, meaning from Genoa, as opposed to genuine.
Yeah.
Could have sounded like he wasn't a genuine Italian, which he might not have been.
I don't even know if genuine is the actual word for somebody from Genoa.
All right. So here's, as I understand it, what they're going on. First of all, we should say, Columbus's remains are just totally Carmen Sandiego material. He died in Valladolid, Spain. I think they got moved to what was called Hispaniola, which is, where Haiti and the Dominican Republic are. And then I think, went to Cuba.
Yeah.
And then I think they're back in Sevilla now. But so there you go. It's a little complicated, and there's not a lot of him left at this point. But they also they use the DNA also of his son. Now this could be a little complicated because, of course, and they as I understand it, both the X and the Y are showing some kind of Jewish genotype, Sephardic genotype. Of course, sometimes you think it's your son. Maybe it isn't.
Yeah.
So there's that. He obviously probably married a very nice Jewish woman and had a son. And, I don't know. I don't know that it matters a whole heck of a lot whether this is true or not. But the one thing that I would say is that anything that kind of complicates our thinking about race and ethnicity and identity is kind of good, because I think our tendency is to think in very simplistic terms, and to think in sort of either ors and very kind of binary. You're either me or you're not me, or you're us or you're other. And, most of these things are really complicated. It's one of the things we learned when Ancestry.com and 23andMe and stuff like that started really looking into who we are. And then you had that whole Henry Louis Gates program where people were finding all kinds of alarming things out. So I think, to the extent that it makes people think, it's a good thing. and it makes people realize that identity is complicated. That's a good thing. I have no idea whether it's true or not. I think as we've established here, it might not be true.
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering, the thing that I was wondering about is the fact that a lot of the headlines, a few of them didn't, but a lot of the headlines basically printed it as, DNA proves this, where if you read down the article, it's like, well, it might be or it might not be. And I think a lot of people just read the beginning and then, in their mind, oh, Columbus was a Sephardic Jew. And so it's kind of very misleading. And I think that the media does that a lot now, a kind of sensationalist headline that's not necessarily true. And that's like even, reputable things are doing it, like CNN and the BBC.
Yeah, may have in a headline just sort of doesn't squawk the way they want headlines to squawk. But yes, I would agree that it's less conclusive than maybe some people have made it out to be. It's also sort of weird because, if this had happened, let's say 40 years ago, it would have sort of had a different ring to it too, because Columbus had a different status. And obviously he has a different status still among, he has his old status, particularly among Italian Americans. Then they tend to like him, as do other people who just sort of like the old way of thinking about things. But, a little bit of the bloom has gone off of Columbus's rose.
Yeah.
And so, now, I mean, it would have been interesting 40 years ago because I would imagine a certain percentage of the Jewish community would have been kind of excited to claim him as their own. Not so sure it works that way now.
Yeah, no, exactly.
So there you go. It's a complicated world, and we should just acknowledge that fact about it. But thanks, Guy, for getting us off to such a great start. And once again, the number 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. We have a Will and a William. Well, we'll go to Will for a second here, although there's a problem. There's going to be a problem that will crop up here, but let's see if we can deal with it. Hi, Will. You're on the air.
Hey, John. Thanks for having my call.
Oh, I'm Colin. John is a tennis player. He has a lot more money than I do, too.
Sorry about that.
It's okay.
Well, that leads me into my question. What's your favorite joke?
The problem with this is that I think I told what is really my favorite joke like last week on the show. So, I mean, I hate to sort of subject any real regular listeners to it again. I have a favorite joke, and then I have the easiest joke to tell. And I've also told that joke on the air, but it's very fast. And so let me just preface this by saying one occasionally runs into people who say, I can't tell a joke, or I don't know any jokes. And when I run into somebody like that, and here's the other example, because the joke I'm about to tell is, I believe, a never-fail joke. So Bill Curry and I were at some dinner in New York honoring Ralph Nader, and they had all these really fancy people there, like Dick Cavett and people like that were there. But anyway, we're sitting there at our table, and Bill says, there's Amy Goodman. Amy Goodman is a kind of famous progressive broadcaster. He goes, there's Amy Goodman. I run into her from time to time. I don't think she thinks I'm funny. I say funny stuff and she doesn't laugh. And so I'd never met Amy Goodman, but I said, I'm going to walk over there. You sit here and you're going to watch. I'm going to make Amy Goodman laugh. So I go over to Amy Goodman at this very fancy party, and she's talking to somebody else, and I just say, excuse me. I said, I just walked over here because I'd like to tell you a joke. And she says, okay. And I said, well, this couple goes out to dinner. And the waiter comes over and says, do you have any questions about the menu? And the woman says, yes, how do you prepare the chicken? And the waiter says, we tell him he's probably not going to make it. And so Amy Goodman laughed at that. And then I walked back and I feel my work is done here. But I feel like if you're a person who thinks you can't tell a joke, you can tell that joke. I mean, it's short, it's easy. It doesn't really have a beat structure, Some jokes they don't work quite as well.
Awkward for Amy to take.
Yeah. It doesn't kick any horrible tripwires. I mean, vegans are maybe not going to like it so much, but so yeah, so it's a carnivorous joke. But other than that, it's not dirty, it's not ethnic, it's none of those things. So that's my favorite joke.
Columbus Day jokes?
I'm not
Columbus jokes?
You want to get me fired, don't you? No, I'm not telling you Columbus Day jokes. I mean, go back and listen to Flip Wilson's Columbus routine. I don't know, does anybody even remember Flip Wilson? But he does do a whole thing about a young, as he says, West Indian woman talking to Columbus. And that would be my joke, but I'm not going to tell it because even though I'm turning 70, I'd like to keep this job a little while longer. I rode up with the CEO in the elevator He informed me that apparently I'm not allowed to retire. Is that even legal? Can they do that? What's happening in this country if you're not even allowed to retire from your job? I'm not saying I want to, but anyway. All right. So, this is unique, and I'm going to take this call because it's unique. This is Lori in Gales Ferry. Hi, Lori.
Hi, Colin. Thanks for taking my call.
I'm excited.
So, you should be, because very appropriate for Indigenous Peoples Day to talk about texture. And I first realized how much I loved texture by looking at a scarf that had been woven. And weaving is woven materials, especially. I just kind of want to go, like, it's just so, like, I don't know, viscerally pleasurable looking at something like this. And
in other words, wait a minute. I want to make sure I'm understanding. So, looking at something and imagining its texture, is that what you're saying?
No, you're not imagining it, because you can see it.
You can see it.
Look.
You can see the texture, but you don't. I mean, I think of texture as a thing that we experience by touch.
Huh.
I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
Well, that's interesting. It just
in other words, you're looking at the scarf and you're noticing its warp and weave, and you are, so you're thinking about that. And if it's say a waffled texture or something like that, that pleases you, even though you don't really know what it feels like.
Correct. Yes. And it's a visual thing that just hits me viscerally. And I wonder if it isn't because, weaving was one of the first things that was invented by humans, after the wheel and fire.
Oh, so you're saying
that.
It's atavistic, that your Neolithic DNA structure gets activated, and you think, we've made something that can protect us from the cold when the campfire goes out. I guess Neolithic people.
Exactly. Okay. Yes.
See, I understand you, Lori.
Yes, thank you. And I think you should do a show on this and find other people who are just, they get that reaction. It's not about the art.
I am fascinated. I'm fascinated. It's not about the art. It's really something more primitive, right? It's something more atavistic. It's like, you are excited by our thousands of year old capacity to create fabric textures by weaving different materials together.
I wouldn't say it's so literal as that, but,
okay.
Perhaps unconsciously that is a reason for why I get almost a physical reaction.
All right. So let me ask you this. Is there sort of a dark side to that moon? Is there an opposite side to that? So I'll just briefly hypnotize you. All right. So you're 7 years old and you're in a friend's backyard swimming pool. It's a summer day and there's a wet bird feather that is drifting towards you. Does that upset you?
No. You mean because it was dead?
I don't know. I'm just trying to come up with maybe a texture you wouldn't like. Where your mind would say, a wet feather, this is not right. Was not put on earth to have wet feathers brush up against me.
No, but okay, that's a good question because, very flat surfaces.
Oh, they're terrible, aren't they?
Disturbing.
Yeah,
right?
The table I'm sitting at right now is it's a flat surface and texture is not. I mean, there's an octopus on it, but it's very unpleasant. I don't like flat texture. Yeah. If this texture had a little bit of give to it and a little bit of warp and weave and a little bit of waffling quality to it, I think it'd be a much better table. All right. I don't think I can talk about this any longer. I don't think I can talk about this any longer. People are going to be wondering what kind of show this is. If you're just tuning in, I don't know what kind of show this is either. But Lori sounds absolutely delightful. And so, William's been waiting, and then we'll go to Tom. I want to remind you of the phone number, 888-720-9677. 888-720-9677. WNPR. Let me give this also as a texture, all right? So soft, 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 medium soft, feathery, flat and hard, rocky edged, velvety, cotton. That's the that's our phone number as a series of textures. All right, here's William. But William, no spoilers, no spoiler poos. Can't have that. Can't do it. Won't do it. Not gonna do it.
Well, I said that to your assistant. I said I will not, drop any spoilers.
Wait a minute. I have an assistant? No. How come nobody told me I had an assistant?
I don't know.
Is it like a magician thing? The person who, like, after I produce the doves, then the person comes over and I hand the doves to the assistant. That kind of thing.
Well, I don't know. They answered the phone, and I said, told them what my topic was, and I said, "And don't worry, I will not have any spoilers."
I'm going to track down. I'm going to track down this assistant because a lot of my needs are not being met right now. Anyway, continue. You have the floor.
So a couple of weeks ago, I watched the last episode of Rings of Power, and everybody knows Tolkien and and all that kind of stuff. And for years, I kind of always loved it. But
by the way, the Elvish term is yada yada. That's the elves say. Everyone loves Tolkien. Yada yada. That's how the elves would say. Okay, continue.
But anyway, after watching that, I said, I wonder how much they are drawing from original Tolkien. And so I started some research, and I'm glad I did because I found out that a lot of what they portrayed was based on original Tolkien writings. And I said, you know what? I need to find out more. It turns out there is a lot of stuff, a lot of it coordinated by Christopher Tolkien.
Yes, right. Yeah, there's the Silmarillion, which Tolkien had started but did not finish when he died, and Christopher kind of took over. There's also, for people who are nerds and geeks and weirdos like me, when you finish reading Lord of the Rings the first time, you notice that there's this big appendix, but you think, well, what am I going to be reading the appendix for? But the appendix has a lot of that stuff.
Yes, that's what they were referring to. They kept saying, and see Tolkien's appendix here, and then there's about 10 volumes of coordinated stuff. But this guy for 30 years created a world, a universe that is incredible, and I didn't realize quite how detailed it is.
There are like languages that kind of work, and songs and folklore and all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I do say one of the things they do in the new season of Rings of Power, this whole idea that Sauron had a brother, Marty Sauron, that is not true. That's nowhere in the actual text. I think they took some liberties there, probably because the actor needed the work or something. Okay, I knew this would happen, but I think it's a good thing. So we're going to go now to, I know we need a break at some point. I may need a break, in a much more comprehensive way. But here, traveling through Connecticut, ideally on a hands-free basis, is Gary. Hi, Gary.
Hello, Colin. How are you?
I'm just fine.
I wanted to make a comment on the caller that you had earlier talking about texture.
Yeah.
Where she can feel what she sees.
Yes.
And that's an actual condition called hyperphantasia. If you hear people doing math in their head and they actually see the numbers, or they're actually doing like writing on a chalkboard or something like that, that is part of hyperphantasia.
I should say, just on a personal note, Gary, my stripper name is Hyperphantasia. Anyway, continue.
A lot of people have this condition. It's not like a condition, but you've heard of aphantasia, where you do not have a mind's eye.
Yes.
This is the opposite of it.
Yeah.
It's your mind's eye can feel and taste and see and hear just as if you were experiencing it.
Although, your mind's eye thinks it can feel and taste things before feeling and tasting them. But that doesn't mean that it can.
That's correct.
Yes. I mean, you can conjure up.
You just achieve that. Right.
We would have to capture Lori from Gales Ferry, which I think we might do anyway, and place her in a room, a locked, windowless room, and study her for a period of 6 months before we could really determine, whether or not she is capable of knowing how something feels.
I think that probably would not go well with the Geneva Convention. I think there are some strict rules against things like that.
Picky. You're like the agency that prosecuted the guy who was making the giant Kyrgyzstan sheep in Montana. There's a rule against everything. Everything. All right. Thanks for your call, though, Gary. That was very interesting. I think we should take a break because I'm getting confused and frightened. So here I am, alone and afraid in a world I never made. We'll take a break. We'll come back with more of your calls.
The time is right, you're perfect, it's my head, the stars get red and all the nights so blue. And then I gotta spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you.
Out of a dream, you are too wonderful to be what you seem. Could there be eyes like yours? Could there be lips like yours? Could there be smiles like yours? Honest and truly, you stepped out of a cloud, and I wanna take you away.
Samara Joy. It's clear now. We're living in your world, and that's a good thing. All right, so it's Ask or Tell Me Anything. We're gonna go. We're gonna take calls at 888-720-9677. That was too fast. 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. All right, so. Because I said I would do this. Well, so we've got Catherine, who has a pretty important thing to talk about. Tom and Mike have cool stuff, but we like callers who kind of, react to the other callers. That's an exciting thing for us, and we don't get very much excitement in our lives. So here is Robert in Brantford. Hi, Robert.
Hey, how you doing, Colin?
Just fine.
So, let's see, where do I begin? So, I'm actually a linguist.
Yeah.
And I wanted to say that a guy from Genoa is called usually Genovese.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, Genoan, sounds okay, but really it's Genovese. And I actually teach Italian too, so in Italian it would be Genovese. So being a linguist, I'm a huge fan of Tolkien, of course.
Mm.
So just wanted to throw that in. I've studied all his languages and his language manufacturing ability and all that as well.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to also say was I'm actually a weaver.
Yes.
So your comment of the woman who was talking about weaving and texture, my great-grandfather was a weaver from northern Italy. And I found out this when I was younger. And I was brought up by hippies during the 70s. And I started to weave at Wesleyan Pottery. I don't know if you know Wesleyan Pottery in Middletown.
I've been there.
Yep. And then, so now I'm just turned 65. And I have a weaving business, sort of, more or less, in Brantford. So,
where in northern Italy was your grandfather a weaver from?
So it's a province that nobody knows, but it's really beautiful. It's called Le Marche, and it's just sort of underneath Venice, next to Umbria.
So not that far north.
Right. So it's Ravenna. I don't know if you know Ravenna or
Marty Sauron was from Ravenna. So I know all about it. I'm just trying to tie all these things together. Do you get the feeling at all that we're doing this show just for you? That there are no other actual listeners to this show? That we decided let's do a show that has all of Robert's interests in it. So we'll do a little.
I know. I was driving home from New Haven listening to it. I'm like, okay, Tolkien. Languages, Genovese thing, and then weaving. I'm like, I should try to call in and just say, love your show.
Do you know?
So,
I think we all have that experience from time to time. So I was sitting in a movie theater watching a movie called The End of the Tour, which is about David Foster Wallace and being interviewed for this long Rolling Stone profile, or I was maybe Rolling Stone. I don't know. Anyway, and I started to think that maybe this movie is just made for me. That I was really enjoying the movie, but it might be the case that I was the only target audience. Since then I've gotten to know the guy who wrote the script, Donald Margulies, and he informs me that they actually expected the movie to be popular with more people than just one. But when the movie was over, I stood up and I looked around, and there was Ilza Chris, my friend, was in the audience with some of her friends, and I said, "Did you enjoy that movie?" And they said, "Yes, we did." And I said, "Good," because I was worried that it was just for one person. So I know what you're going through right now, Robert. I feel you.
Yeah,
man.
your show was like, I should try to call in, and I didn't think I'd get in, but here I am, and I just wanted to say that I was all those things, and I love your show, and it's really fun to listen to, and
well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Just for that, I'm going to allow you to address me as Hyperphantasia, but just once. All right, so here's Tom, and then we're going to Catherine, and then we're going to go to Mike. That's the plan. Everybody knows the plan now. All right, so here is Tom in Manchester. Hi, Tom.
Yes, good afternoon. How you doing? I've called in before.
Yes, you have, yep.
I'm thinking a different perspective on Columbus Day. I know he's honored by Italian Americans, and that's, fine. But as a person of color, remembering explorers of color that sailed before he was born from Africa, China, Polynesians, that, discovered different lands, and actually he arrived in the West Indies, not the East Indies, to his dying day, Columbus. And secondly, he didn't discover North American continent. It was other Italian explorers. But the furthest he came was to Belize, and then the southernmost part was Trinidad, Tobago. So I'll give him credit for that. But it's just a matter of, remembering the indigenous tribes that were there. And I'm glad that they had that documentary recently on PBS with John Leguizamo called Historia America. That was good. It just ended this past Friday, the third part, but the first part was excellent, what they've done with CGI, and that they weren't primitive and backwards, but they did know about mathematics, whether it be the Aztecs to the Incas, and before warfare, colonialism, and slavery came along from the Spanish. And with the Italians, there's a connection between that and North Africa, going back to Hannibal of Carthage and the ugliness during World War II when they invaded. Before World War II, we invaded Ethiopia and East Africa and Libya before that. So, under Mussolini. So, and they have contributed to the world in good ways, going back to the Roman Empire. But there's also a downside to that. But as person of color, we've achieved in the world too, whether it be from Africa, Asia, that from mathematics to different contributions that should be remembered. So it needs to be a balancing out. They can celebrate it their way. The indigenous tribes here should celebrate it their way because they were here first, and the last to be allowed to vote in 1962, the different tribes actually, and that should be respected and remembered too, that and how they were unfortunately mistreated through reservation policies and in the past.
Yeah, I'm with you all the way on this, and I just do want to say, I mean, history is redolent of stories, narratives that we construct in order to kind of justify the way things are, or the way we want things to be. Sometimes it's a relatively benign thing, but I think with this one, just as you're suggesting, if you want to legitimize a kind of political and economic hegemony, what you do is you say that this is a more sophisticated civilization that discovered a less sophisticated civilization and brought all the benefits of the more sophisticated civilization to it, and you just paper over everything else. If you're really interested in this, I think the book that really got this conversation going, and I don't remember the name of it anymore, but it was by Kirkpatrick Sale, and I think it came out in the 90s.
Yeah, and another book was this. They came before Columbus, but the late Ivan Van Sertima came out, I think, in 1986. He passed away in 2011, but that's an excellent book, maybe in his 6th or 7th printing, but it's called They Came Before Columbus. Ivan Van Sertima.
I'd like to read that one. I'd like to track that down.
Yeah, you may be able to order it through Barnes & Noble, but it's a wrestling book. I got the original one with his signature in it before he passed away 2011.
Yeah, I think Howard Zinn probably deals with it in People's History of the United States, and there was a guy named James Lowen who wrote a book called Lies My History Teacher Taught Me.
Yeah, another one, Black Discovery of America by Michael Bradley, that came out in the 1990s too, from Canada. I think he's native. It brings in a different perspective. So yeah, give them credit where credit's due, no matter where you're from, European or non-European. And let's move on with Americans, because with this anti-immigrant bashing, we could do much better. So that's why I got to say, and that whether people agree with me or not, it's my First Amendment rights, and that's what history's about. We can learn from it and do better, hopefully.
Hopefully. Thanks for your call, Tom. I really appreciate it, and I appreciate you and everything you had to say. Here's Catherine in New London. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Colin. Am I on the radio?
You are on the radio. So am I. We're both on the radio.
So I went to the movies yesterday and watched The Apprentice, the film.
Yeah.
And I was hoping that perhaps you might have seen it so we could discuss, or perhaps some of your listeners have.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. I mean, I know what it is. This is a cast with actors. Sebastian Stan plays, formerly known as the Winter Soldier, plays Donald Trump, and it uses some existing materials, including, for example, Ivana Trump's memoir and things like that, to recreate aspects of Trump's life. But I have not seen it. It is my full intention to see it, but I haven't done it yet.
Oh, good. Well, I would just highly recommend it for you and for everyone, quite frankly. And as somebody in your audience just said, I stood up at the end and started clapping, but there were only about 2 other people in the theater because it was at 12:30 on Sunday. So it is extremely well done. But some of my contacts this morning are talking about how it's almost too sympathetic. and I worry about that a little bit. But I didn't. I thought the subtle undertones showed the exact nature of the man. So I recommend it highly.
All right. Well, thanks for your call. Yeah, we will check.
Thank you.
We will definitely at some point discuss this movie. I mean, it's sort of been, we've been having conversations about doing that. Anyway, let's see. I said Mike, so let's talk to Mike. Mike in Woodbury. Once again, let me give out the number, 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. Here we go with Mike. Hi.
Hi, Colin. So I'm an old guy. I grew up in the 60s, and I don't remember knowing any kid or even hearing about any kid that had a peanut allergy when I was in grammar school, high school, whatever. And now I read that something like 1 in 14 kids have peanut allergies. And apparently just, food allergies in general have hugely increased over the last couple of decades. I mean, you go into a restaurant now and they say, does anybody here have a food allergy? And, there's labels on, they may contain nuts. I mean, this is something that has gotten much worse, and especially in America, apparently, over the last couple of years. And I guess medical science doesn't really know exactly why. But one of the most interesting theories is that kind of helicopter parenting. Parents don't let their kids go out and play in the dirt as much, and so they aren't exposed to germs and bacteria, and they're not able to build up resistance and a really good resistance to these diseases that they later are subject to. So that's, I don't know, it's kind of weird.
Well, I can say that as a little boy growing up in Georgia, sometimes my mom would say, "Why don't you go out and go play hide and seek with your friends?" And I'd say, "Well, where are we going to do that?" And she'd say, "Go over to the Carter's farm. The peanut farm over there, the Jimmy Carter and his family. Go over there and play in the peanut." And so that's probably it. Because I did that, I'm not allergic to peanuts. I don't know. I do know that the reality of this is, though, I mean, whatever caused it, I think it's good that we're sort of aware of it now, because there are people who can have really urgent reactions to some of this stuff. And, even if it happened 1 in 500 exposures or something, that's still too much to put somebody's life and safety on the line. So I'm glad we're vigilant about it. And I agree with you, Mike, that it's an interesting question how we got there. Is it just a changing set of perceptions, or are we just more likely to be allergic to certain things for reasons such as the one that you suggest? And I personally do not know the answer, and I'm not sure anybody else does either. Okay, so let's Let's talk to Anthony in New Haven. I think we'll go to a break after that, but the number is 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. Let's see. Anthony in New Haven, you have the floor.
Thanks, Colin. Before I get to my question issue, let me just issue an apology for not having called in a few weeks. I've been very busy at work, and I'm sure that you've missed me dearly.
Very upset. Very hard, tough period for me to go through, but, I appreciate your apology now.
So a few weeks ago on one of the call-in shows, I think actually the last one I called into, somebody asked a question or posed a question to you about New Haven and Hartford being amongst the least affordable or most expensive places to live in the country. Mm-hmm. And you kind of said that was misleading because in the case of Hartford, one, because it's so small, I think 15 square miles, but the bigger issue being that it's really a reflection of just how poor the residents are. So it's not that prices are so high so much as incomes are so low, and that was misleading.
Well, yeah.
I have another.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have another sort of related one, related in the sense that it's about housing and cost of living that I find infuriating. I'm always seeing these lists of where the best places to live in the country are. And it's always like Minnesota and Iowa and Nebraska. And no offense to those places, but last time I checked, people who can choose to live where they want are rarely going to Minnesota or Nebraska or Iowa. And the reason for that they end up listing these places as the best places to live is because nobody wants to live there, and therefore prices are cheap. Things are not crowded. Housing is cheap, but that's a function of demand. And it kind of reminds me of that Yogi Berra joke, and in this instance, it's almost the inverse of it, but the joke being nobody goes there anymore, it's too crowded. Mm-hmm. In this instance being
everybody goes there.
Wants to go, because nobody's there.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, first of all, a lot of these, let me just say this. As a broadcaster, I can tell you that my inbox every single day is full of studies from like Wallet Hub and stuff like this about these kinds of topics. And most of them are complete crap. I mean, they are based on very, very, loose. They're not based on, scholarly research that's peer-reviewed and stuff like that. It's just like they just pulled some numbers together because they're trying to get something on the radio. They're trying to call some attention to something. So I'm very suspicious of most of those studies. And as you're suggesting, a lot of it, I mean, best places to live, that's such a subjective thing. What's the best place to live? For some people, it's, a lot of outdoor activities and, also for other people, it's lots of free parking people have different ideas about what a good place to live is. I think a better thing to do, and there have been some halfway legitimate studies of this, is to study happiness. I think this is sort of public knowledge. I think he's been very open about it. A guy I know named Leo Canty, after he retired, went to all the countries that had the highest happiness ratings. And I think his overall takeaway was, the people did seem happier there, in places like Australia, New Zealand, or Denmark, or whatever. I think that's a more interesting thing. Even that may be the product of some kind of conditioning. If you grow up in a country that has a really strong social fabric and a very well knitted together identity, to get back to the subject of texture, there might be a kind of pervasive sense, we're really happy here. And then that becomes kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. But I'd rather look at that. The best places to live just seems like hokum to me. Who even knows what that means?
Yeah, and the really interesting thing is that the biggest cities, New York, LA, Miami, those tend to rank as at the bottom of the best places to live. So in other words, they rank as the worst places to live, even though they're the most expensive, which means, in other words, that there's the greatest demand for them.
Right. But I mean, best places to live, yes, there's a great demand. So you wind up paying $4,000 for some living space, the size of, a public restroom stall or something. And so then it doesn't seem like you're having a very good time. So I think you're spot on with this, that this is the kind of thing that should be open anyway to multiple interpretations. As so many things are. All right, so like food allergies. Which place has the most food allergies? I would want to know that as well. All right, let's take a little break. We'll come back. The number's 888-720-9677. You could call right now.
Sweet life, sweet life, a sweet, 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 sweet life. Sweet life, sweet life, sweet pie. Housekeeper, since you were born, the sunshine always kept you warm. So why see the world if you got the beach? Don't know why see the world when you got the beach, the sweet life.
I'm very immature. All right, so today's technical producer, as usual, would be the one and only maestro himself, Dylan Reyes. The producer of this show is Jonathan McPants, but the star is born. The star was born actually a couple of weeks ago, but Frankie DeVivo, who seems like he might be kind of a super intern, is actually screening calls right now, and so that's the whole team. And of course, our senior producers, Lily Tyson, our bosses are Meg Dalton and Robin Doyenake, and I could go on and on James Michener style until I really sort of got back to things that happened in the Austro-Hungarian Empire that resulted ultimately in the creation of this radio show. Okay, so where did I say I was going to go? We're going to just continue to take calls here at 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. And here is Kate from West Hartford. Hi, Kate.
Hi, Colin. I just wanted to call in and talk a little bit about this show that I went up to see at the Clark Art Institute twice. It closes today. It's on.
We should say the Clark is in Williamstown, part of Williams College. Anyway, continue. So people don't know.
Yeah, it's like 2 hours away.
Yeah,
it's a hike. And it was an amazing show about Guillaume Lethier, who was the son of a white Frenchman and a mixed-race freedwoman in Guadeloupe, and his father brought him to France when he was 14, and he was a budding artist, and so he had this he was born in 1760, and he had this amazing career at the forefront of the artistic world of Paris. He ran the French art school in Rome. That he himself was a graduate of. He survived. He came through the revolution. He was worked closely for Lucien Bonaparte, one of Napoleon's brothers, and he's painting these huge, massive historical, and mythological canvases, at the pinnacle of the art world, and he disappeared. His legacy disappeared, and there are portraits of him, and he looks like a white guy, but he was this mixed race person. He was friends with Dumas Elder and Dumas Jr., and it's such a powerful story about how racism really has affected the Academy, and it's only now that we're learning about people like this who are right there in plain sight. And when I went on Saturday, I ran into a woman. She was speaking French, and I said, "Oh, did you know about him?" And she said, "Oh no, I do now, and I'm a professor of art history, and I know about him now, but I did not know about him when I was young."
Wow.
And it was just mind blowing. Mm-hmm. And I feel like the more we dig, the more we're going to find this stuff. And it's not, our history is not as pristine white as our textbooks made out.
That's a very good call for Indigenous Peoples Day. So thanks very much for that call, Kate. Really appreciate it. We're going to go over to Sandy in Hamden. This is going to be a very, fraught conversation, I think. A smarter person than I wouldn't even take this call, but I'm going to take this call. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Colin. I'm sorry to bring this up, but I'm going to complain a bit. So you had fundraising, like a week and a half or so ago. I am a sustaining member, and I don't like these fundraising periods that you have. I basically tune out. Your sister station, WSHU in Fairfield, doesn't do half as much on-air fundraising as you guys. Isn't there another way to raise money outside of maybe taxing everybody that buys a radio or a TV or something?
We
like
tried that.
I guess in other countries. Yeah, that's not going to work. So what do you say about my...
I would say the following things. There are going to be some people who won't like any of this, even that we're having this conversation. But first of all, I think a lot of people share your frustration. I will whisper one little secret to you. The podcast versions don't have the pledge breaks in them. So if you listen to the podcast, typically there aren't pledge breaks in them. So, we all understand that this is kind of this is a lemon that produces a little bit less lemon juice every time we squeeze it, partly because of sustaining members. At a certain point, you have sustaining members. You can't make them members again. So if you do your job too well, the numbers go down, and they have been going down. I think there's a lot of eagerness, not just here at CT Public, but in the industry at large. If you read there's actually a trade publication of public broadcasting called Current, 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 and there are inevitably are articles that are like, what else can we do? But and I'll just tell you what my philosophy is. I think you should get more for being a member, and of course, obviously, there's one possible thing would be. I think we have essentially already done it since the podcasts are what I say they are, but it should be a little bit easier for you to avoid the fundraising breaks, maybe on our live stream as well. I don't know. But I think in general, membership should be worth more. You should get more things. You should have access to stuff that other people don't have access to, both in terms of, maybe content that we create, but also, I don't ever want to paywall stuff because that's wrong. Or it's not that it's wrong, but it's so pervasive everywhere else that I guess the golden lining and maybe the defense of what we do is that you think of almost everywhere else. Everywhere else either has paywalls. I write for Hearst, Connecticut Media. There's a paywall to get to my stuff. If you don't subscribe. You can't just pay $1 and read that one thing either. You have to subscribe. So, and obviously, all the things on your TV set are either subscriptions that you pay to Netflix and, Amazon Prime and Max, or our advertising-supported television, network television and stuff like that, or cable stations, all ad-supported, all interrupted by advertising, except for public television. So, there isn't a way to create content for no money. It doesn't exist. Not the amount of content that we create anyway. If we wanted to do 5 programs a year or something, we could maybe get a grant. But to do what we do, it just takes money. It takes money from the user. So I agree. It feels like we do it too much. That it goes on too long. I hear nothing but complaints about it, even from people very close to me. And I can tell you that there are conversations going on in this building all the time about how we could make this easier, less of an annoyance, and I hope we're going to get there. We have to get there anyway, Sandy, because really this model is less and less productive all the time, just partly because so many people already have participated in it. It's hard to find the new people. Anyway, that doesn't mean you shouldn't pledge, though. You should pledge, but you don't have to do it right now. But December, whenever we come back, you're going to have to pledge. All right. Thanks for listening. I'm being led away in chains now for even questioning this model. Free me before my birthday.
The number you have reached has been disconnected.